Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you enjoyed that little sequence at the start there. That was my entry for the POV challenge that Peter Lindgren is hosting. Lindgren? I've probably got that wrong. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. That was my take on the challenge. Really difficult challenge, as you basically had to film everything with one hand from a sort of point of view perspective. So really you're using one hand to control any of the action in the scene, and the other hand's trying to, you know, get camera movement, pull focus all at the same time. So it was actually a lot more challenging than I thought it was going to be, but it was a lot of fun, so I think it turned out quite nice. So I just want to take you through kind of what I did, show you a little bit behind the scenes of, you know, how I shot it, just so you can get an idea of how I got some of the shots. So first things first, I sorted all my lighting out. I closed all the blinds in my kitchen where I was going to be filming. That was just to stop the light sort of changing, as it was like midday, so I didn't want the exposure changing, so I just shut all the blinds down pretty much all the way down so it wouldn't really affect any of my shots. And then I set up two lights. One would be like a key light, just kind of shining down onto the surface that I was doing most of the filming, and then another light just bouncing straight off the ceiling, just to kind of create a blanket of light in the room. I really needed as much light as possible, as I was shooting everything in 100 frames per second. I actually really would prefer to have a little bit more light, but I just had to work with what I had, and it seemed to do the job quite well. As obviously we're all in lockdown just now, I've been trying to, you know, eat a little bit more healthy, so I've been making a lot of fruit smoothies, and I thought this would be something that would look really tasty on screen, and it'd be nice and colourful and vibrant. I didn't go with any sort of shot list for this, I just kind of went into it and let the ideas come to me. I would suggest that you get some sort of shot list before you do these things. It will save you a lot of wasted time, or at least have a rough idea of what you want to film. So don't do what I did, definitely get some sort of shot list. It was definitely important when shooting this to vary up my angles, to make sure that I was shooting from different perspectives, different heights, sort of close-in shots, wide shots, just to make it more entertaining. I really think when you're doing these kind of B-roll sequences, you need a good mixture of close-up shots, of pans, of wide shots, of rotation shots. All this sort of stuff adds to the overall thing when you have a variety of shots in your sequence. This first shot actually proved to be quite difficult. I knew this was going to be the sort of opening to the sequence, so I knew that I really wanted to get this nice and smooth, so it took me probably about like 10 attempts to get one that I actually liked and one that I thought that was usable. Just because, you know, when you're moving things in with one hand and you're trying to hold the camera and keep the movement of the camera steady with the movement of the action steady, it can be really difficult to get both to sort of sync up. So it took me like about 10 attempts to do it, but I feel like I got something nice in the end. I'd already actually picked out my music for this, so I knew the kind of feel of the sequence before I went into it. I knew the kind of style I wanted to achieve. I did so many takes of pouring these berries that all the fruit started to sort of bruise and kind of mush up, and it really became kind of disgusting, and I had to kind of clean up throughout a lot of the shoots and sort of take out the bad fruit that was all smashed up and replace it with some new stuff. I think it was really important for a lot of the shots just to make sure that they were as steady as possible. I knew in post that I was going to go in and add a little bit of warp stabilizer to a lot of the shots to just make sure that they're nice and smooth, but I knew that I had to kind of get them into camera as smooth as possible, especially for any of the sort of big movements where the camera's moving a lot, because sometimes you can add warp stabilizer to a clip and it ruins it, and there's really no way around that. It can really make the background warp and whatnot, so you need to make sure when you're filming these things to keep it as smooth as possible when you actually film it. I showed you where I put the lights at the start of the video, but I did end up actually moving them quite a bit, as a lot of the action took place in different parts of the kitchen. Some of it was on the counter, some of it was then moved over to the sort of sink area, so I had to kind of move the lights a little bit around, just made sure that they stayed out of the frame for as much as possible. I think you might be able to see them in a few of the shots, but as long as they were sort of out of the main shots that you were focused and dialed in on, you wouldn't really notice them. When I went over to wash the fruit, I knew I wanted to get a sort of top-down shot of the water falling onto the fruit. So I decided to kind of climb up on the counter, so technically it is still my POV if I'm standing on my countertop. Just be careful if you try this kind of shot at home, you don't fall and break your camera. So I hope some of this behind the scene footage gives you an idea of how I got my shots, how I kind of went about structuring the edit, and it just shows you the kind of shots you can get just sitting in your house and how you can kind of be creative no matter where you are. You can kind of make the most of your environment to get some decent shots. I actually ended up using the first take for this shot. Obviously when I pour the fruit in, there's far too much for the cup. I didn't really know how much it would take to fill it, but I obviously cut far too much fruit up and it kind of spilled all over the counter. I then took some of the fruit out and did the shot again so that it would only fill about halfway up, but when I was in post, I kind of had a look at it and I thought, you know what, it actually looks a bit more entertaining when all the fruit kind of spills out all over the place. It's a bit more like dramatic, a bit over the top. So I just actually used that take, and they're the sort of happy accidents that happen when you're filming these things. You might end up not really getting the shot you had in mind, but it ends up sort of working and just being a bit more enjoyable to watch. So this shot here, when I actually started to blend the fruit, I knew I was only going to get one real shot of this, so I didn't really try anything too complex with camera movement. It was going to simply just be a pan in and out when it came to actually putting that blender on, because I didn't want to do anything too crazy, mess up the shot, and then I would have had to make an entire new smoothie all over again just to get a better shot. So if it's going to be something that's complex you only get one shot at, then maybe, you know, do something a bit more static, maybe just a simple pan in and out, something you know you can achieve, and then keep the sort of crazier movements for things that you can try again and again till you get it like the way you want it to. I really had to pay attention to the focus point in a lot of these shots, as that's where the audience eye would be directed to. As I'm sort of using one hand, it was kind of hard to pull any sort of focus as I shot this all in manual focus, so I couldn't really pull focus as I was doing camera movements. So I made sure I set my focus before the shot. So this being one of my favourite shots where the smoothie pours into the glass, I set my focus and I did a simple pan-in movement that allowed the focus to go from where the liquid was coming out the glass to where it was hitting the bottom of the glass. As I moved in, it would change focus as the glass started filling up, and I really liked the result of this. It was actually, like I said, one of my favourite shots, so that's something to keep in mind as well when you're shooting this kind of thing. Doing it with one hand, you're going to struggle to pull focus, so if you're using manual focus, have a good think about where your shot starts, where it finishes, to make sure that the bits of action you want the audience to see is in focus when you want it to be. So again, hopefully there's some people out there that can find this sort of entertaining and useful and see sort of how I went about constructing this sequence. I think the challenge is over now, but I would suggest if you do watch this, I would give it a go. It's really good to kind of see what you can come up with when you're limited to just sort of one hand and having to stay at that sort of point of view perspective. If you follow me on Instagram, be sure to tag me in some of your examples of this kind of sequence. I'd really like to get to see some more perspectives of how people did it and some other creative ideas that other people came up with in their own space. Anyway, that's all from me. Big shout out to Peter for putting on the challenge. It was another really great challenge to take part on, and I had a lot of fun doing it. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more creative content like this. I'll see you in the next one.